Okay, I guess, yeah, we can get started. So, hi everyone, I'm Daniel Wynn. I am the CEO of Lavag. For those who don't know how to pronounce it, it's like Lavag or Lavag or Elevag or whatever. So yeah, very happy for you to be here today. And so, for those who don't know, we have launched a few webinars recently, and this is the second of the series. And today we'll be focusing on technical details about how we can build and evaluate large language models from using LLMs. So let me get started. So before we go into details, I just wanted to go back into what our project is. So Lavag is like a large action model framework for AI web agents. And we really focus on providing the easiest framework for people to build, evaluate, deploy those agents. So to show you how it works, I have a little demo that comes from like our latest demo, but you can find them on our quick tour. For those who don't know, we have a lot of documentation that you can find on our GitHub and so on. So this example, you can actually find and reproduce it in the knowledge retrieval section. And so I will show you one example of things we can build. So in that example, I will focus on information retrieval. And for instance, I asked like current state-of-the-art generate agents like Gemini or OpenAI, find me the most recent paper on Hugging Face that is hot on text to video. What happens is because the search engine of Google and Microsoft is not always accurate, the outcome of those systems is not perfect. Same thing for OpenAI, because Bing also kind of sucks sometimes. And so what we see here is the solutions are not as good as humans, even for information retrieval, because they don't have the same ability as humans to look for information. If I want to look at the base paper of Hugging Face, I know that it will be available on Hugging Face daily papers, that the search bar of Hugging Face sucks, it's syntactic, not semantic, and that I should scroll through the website, keeping in mind that I want to find text to video papers and click on the right ones. And because of all this complexity, the vanilla researchers, the search engines that you find out there are not able to be that precise, but we can program agents to think like humans. And that's what our framework does. So we'll provide some knowledge about Hugging Face and ask it to perform that search. And for instance, here, we can create graded demos of those agents. And for instance, here, you will see the agent reproducing the steps I just mentioned, which is it starts on the daily papers. It looks at the whole page. Here, I think it will do scan twice for some reason, but it's okay. Blah, blah, blah. It thinks about the next steps. Then it will know that it has to scroll back in time because there's no relevant papers on that page. Okay, it goes to the other page. It will click on the paper that is relevant. And then it will output the answer. So that's an example of agents we can build. And this is a very simple one, but you can do many other things. For instance, we're going to release soon something that you might find useful, which is an agent that will get you receipts on OpenAI to send the bills to your friends, I mean to your department, accounting department, and so on. But yeah, this is an example of kind of agents that we can do. But the topic of this webinar is to go into more details. Maybe, yeah, for those who, maybe I guess it's easier if you will drop it in the chat for people who want. Later, we have a little poll to help us improve the framework. But let's get more into the details. So I guess some of you know already, but I'm going to, provide the big picture and then drill into the details about how we implemented the framework. So how does it work? The idea is that we have two main components, a word model and an action engine. So the word model is in charge of planning. it has access to the screenshots and the objective, like, for instance, get me my receipts on OpenAI, or for instance, get me the latest papers on text-to-video. This model will then generate instructions like, okay, click on that, click, go back in time, etc. And this is what we call the action engine. And the action engine takes natural language and then produces an action. And this action is executed by the pattern interpreter to interact with the web. And this interaction can change the observation of the world. For instance, the page changes. And this update is then fed to the world models, which then loops until we're able to finish the whole thing. And so today, the focus is going to be on a specific part of the action engine, which is a navigation engine. So the action engine, as we said, has the role of, executing instructions that the world model provides. And the key engine among all that are inside the action engine is the navigational engine. The pattern engine is just like it's just an engine that is in charge of tools that the agent can call, but we don't have that many yet. And the navigation controls are just easy navigation steps that are stateless, like wait, scroll, and so on. But the real interesting thing is the navigation engine. It's a model that is in charge of understanding the current page and know where to click, basically. And this is going to be the focus of this webinar. Also, I didn't mention, but if you have questions, yeah, don't hesitate to ask them on the chat, and there will be a QA session at the end. Oh yeah, they're just saying someone says the text is fuzzy. Is it still the case?
For me, it was just for the Gradio demo. It seems okay,
Yeah.
okay for me now.
Okay, good. So regarding the navigation engine, how does it work? So as we mentioned, this is a lower level engine, which takes a natural language query and turns them into browser action. So for instance, the query can be something very specific. It's low level, which means it's not like, okay, fetch me my receipts. It's like more specific, like click on that search button on a search bar, for instance, and type whatever, for instance, here, type Yann Lequin. And the output is a code that actually performs the action. For instance, we use Selenium to program a browser. We can also cover Playwright, and soon we'll provide a Chrome extension that people can directly install. And so it's the role of this navigation engine is to produce that code. And so the way we have done it is through RAG. So for those who don't know what RAG is retrieval augmented generation. And the idea is that you first have some document. Here it's HTML of the current page, and then you split it into chunks. And then you retrieve the most relevant chunks, for instance, using either semantic, syntaxic, or both type of retriever. You get the most relevant chunks to answer your query, and then you feed them into your LLM, which can then generate the code to interact with the element you want. There are two components here that are complementary, but it's interesting to get into each. So LLMs have something that is quite amazing. It's the ability to understand complex scenarios and apply semantic rules. Because, for instance, if I drop a very complex HTML code, it can understand which one is the right element to target, how to interact with it, and so on. And for those who have played a little bit with web testing and automation and so on, it can be very hard to understand what is the optimal, strategy to select an element. But an LLM, especially the latest ones, are quite capable to understanding how an element is nested and how you can capture it. And it's quite robust to knobs. The issue, however, is it's expensive, because as you know, those models are quite compute heavy, especially if you use like the ones on API. And also there is a limited window size, which means you cannot drop usually the whole HTML because it would be too many tokens and they wouldn't fit. And even if you use a large one, for instance, Gemini, which has 1 million token, it has a phenomenon that we call lost in the middle, which means large parts of tokens in the middle are ignored, and therefore it's not as precise as you would think. So even if you use a large context window LLMs, it's not working out of the box. And second, it's very slow. Even if you use Gemini with 1 million context window, it's very slow and very expensive. So it's quite limiting. It would be very hard or impossible to just drop the whole HTML of the page to have an LLM generate the right code. On the other hand, retrievers like that exist that are more classical are much faster to run. They're much more cost efficient, and they can handle easy patterns, either syntactic or semantic ones. But on complex ones where you require understanding, thinking, and so on, it's much harder. And they are also less robust to noise. So, for instance, an example is, for instance, imagine you want to target the I don't know, the how can I say, the title, the node that you might retrieve is polluted by outside elements that are useless, and that might make your retriever fail. Yeah. So instead of using chunks of HTML, we have another approach, which is we use dictionaries that contain the attributes of the different elements, like class, text, and so on. And so this is something we had to play with because using chunks, as we showed, is not always the best solution. Maybe I should go directly for the chunks. Oh, little issue here. Sorry. So the issue with chunks is that they are usually huge and they're not necessarily well cut, because you need a chunker. You need to define a way to chunk the HTML into different pieces, and it's not exactly always well cut. And the issue is that because they are huge, they can have a lot of noise, and the retriever can become quite confused and not be able to find the right, elements. Because if your node is like, with 1,000 characters, and there's only one element inside this node that is relevant, your retriever might fail to find it. However, if you split your whole HTML page into simple dictionaries, each element can be easily isolated and found. And therefore, we reduce the noise of surrounding elements. And also, we have strategies that I can mention afterwards that allow to have fewer chunks and therefore to have a much faster indexing, because we need to use semantic search with embedding models. And so, contrary to what I just showed, we tried a lot of different approaches. And one way to have the best of both worlds is to actually combine both of those things. So the first part is we do not only split it into chunks, but we turn each element into a simple dictionary. And then we do a retrieval on the dictionaries. And this way, because with a retriever on the dictionaries, we can leverage the cleanliness of dictionaries to be very precise in finding the right elements. And then we feed the top dictionaries, and then we do a correspondence between those dictionaries and the chunks they're associated with. So the idea is that doing retrieval on dictionaries is very effective, but sometimes you might need more information around it to better understand and to take the right decision. For instance, if there can be ambiguity in the sense that your elements might not be distinguishable with only its attributes, but with its surrounding, you can have enough information to uniquely identify an element. And therefore, to provide the context around the dictionaries you find with this kind of mapping, where we find the chunks around those top 5 dictionaries we found, and those are the ones we feed to the LLM. And this approach allows us to have the best of both worlds, because we can be quite precise thanks to the use of dictionaries, but we can have the robustness and the context that chunks provide. Maybe also I should show you like what it means in practice. Like we have a small example. So for instance, what I call a node is, a chunk is something like that, which is a huge patch of HTML. And a dictionary is much simpler. A dictionary is just something like that, where we have like some attribute and so on. And as you might imagine, this is much easier to search than this. And the idea is can you, I think this example is better explained because you are the one who did it.
Yes. The first one is the raw node. So you can see that this is complex for the retriever because there is a lot of different features that we don't use. For example, like a list style, a WebKit, or things like this that represent some noise for the retriever. So the idea is to create a dictionary that where we will only use a few HTML class, element, name, place order on XPath, and we will turn the retriever on it in order to have only the relevant information. And then so we can see this in the dictionary node. So this is each node is one HTML element, and the retriever turn on those nodes. This is the retriever is really focused on really local information. And then we will find the corresponding raw node where there is context for the LLM in the hybrid method, and we will match dictionary node with raw node in order to find them. On this example, we can see that in the first method, the raw node is not the correct one for the search bar. We can look in the HTML, but there is not the search bar in this one. Whereas the dictionary node, the retriever find for the first node the correct HTML element, which is the input search Wikipedia, and the hybrid method leverage this dictionary to find the correct raw node. So that's it.
Hey,
Yeah.
Nathan,
Thanks, Nathan.
can we send these nodes directly? Like we retrieve the nodes that contain these XPaths. Can't we send these directly because these will be short? Tokens consumed will be less.
You mean
Yes,
sending that?
Yes,
You mean?
We could, but there is some issues that we will discuss because for example, sometime in some form you have a search bar, but the placeholder is not always in the search bar, but they might be a label that is above the search bar, and it's a different HTML element. So you can't be sure that your semantic signal will be in the element that you want to interact with. So you need a bit of context to feed it in the to the LLM in order to him to find the correct one.
So we can take more questions at the end, but let me just finish this one because you did it. But let's have a question at the end. But yeah, for the specific use case, this could be potentially sufficient, but as Nathan mentioned, there are edge cases where you might want more context around the XPath to make sure you have the right one. So that's a very legit point. And maybe for 80%, this would be sufficient. But we found that to make things more robust, but as you said, it's more expensive. It's sometimes good to provide the context. So this is how we do it. And then we have several optimization tricks to make it perform better. For instance, one is to kind of rephrase. So with a very small LLM, to just standardize information and separate what is useful for the retriever versus what is useful for the LLM. Because for instance, if I ask, click on the search bar and type something, the type Yann Lequin is useless for the retriever sometimes. This is, what is useful is the beginning, and the rest is noise that can confuse the retriever. So we can use a small LLM to rewrite that so that we tell it exactly what is useful for the retriever, and we have the other part that we keep for the whole LLM. There are also other small tips. For instance, sometimes there are different parts of HTML for the same thing, because for instance there are there's one option for let's say a small screen on your smartphone, or one for instance for your desktop. And the issue is that sometimes there is semantic confusion, and it tries to interact with things that are not interactable on your computer, for instance. And that's why we, for instance, just did a simple filtering so that we are sure that we are not trying to interact with non-interactable elements. There is another little trick that we did, which is to inject the full XPath and force the LLM to use the XPath. This is important because this solves the indistinguishability issues, because sometimes some elements are indistinguishable. Like for instance, you want to, I don't know if you play with Gradio and you try to automate Gradio interfaces, but for instance, the inputs have no unique identifier. I guess some of you know that sometimes it happens that you have no unique identifier on some element you want to interact with. So we injected on the fly to each element its full XPath, and then we ask the LLM to use that to identify elements in a unique manner. And also sometimes the LLM does not fully use enough criteria to have something that is precise enough to uniquely identify your element. So using the XPath is the best way to make sure we have something that is as unique as possible. And it's also a useful way to map, as we showed before, the dictionaries to their corresponding chunks. So that's something else we have put in place. And now we're going to talk soon about evaluation. And before we talk about evaluation, it's important to talk about datasets. So here, for example, I'm just showing you something we also launched to facilitate the evaluation and improvement of large action models. It's a big action. You can find it on Hugging Face, but basically we have provided and curated a few data sets to evaluate those large action models. We have one example that you can find, which is called the wave, which is from our anonymized telemetry. And the idea is that the inputs, some of the columns are raw HTML of the page we want to interact with, a query, for instance, like click on create account, and then we have the full XPath of the ground truth of the actual element we want to interact with. And the idea is that this enables us to create metrics to evaluate the performance, for instance, of the retriever, and also for the LLM. For the retriever, we use something called backend node idea, which is a term that was coined in the Mind2Web paper. And the idea is that our overall goal is to measure the ability of a retriever to find the ground truth elements. And to do that, we have a simple process. We inject into each element a unique ID, which is called the backend node ID or unique ID. And then we use the XPath we have of the ground truth to select it. We then extract its outer HTML. And then for each element inside the outer HTML, we extract those unique IDs. And then this will be used to assess the ability of the retriever to find those unique IDs. And so now, after I've injected those nodes, I ask my retriever to retrieve the most relevant chunks of HTML, and I look at the backend node IDs that are inside the retrieve chunks of HTML, and then I look at how many of the ground truth I got. And a good thing is we will provide easy tooling for people to evaluate retrievers on those benchmarks, on those evaluation data sets, but soon also on the data of your local agent. I don't know if you saw, but we provide the ability to let me show you that, to log what your agent sees. But that means that soon we can also enable you to improve specific retrievers on the examples, on the websites that you're interested in. So this is not out there yet. Matthias, one of our guys, is finishing that. But not only you will be able to evaluate retrievers on those like general data sets, but also on yours too. And you will be able to compare different options to find the one that is the best in terms of recall and maybe also speed. The good thing with having those evaluation metrics and data in place is that we can now try to experiment different approaches and evaluate which one is the best. For instance, here you can see on the x-axis the number of chunks my retriever is supposed to output. And on the y-axis, it's the recall, as I mentioned, which is the percentage of ground truth IDs, backend node IDs I'm able to fetch. So you see that our solution is relatively good and it plateaus relatively quickly. So the blue one is recall, which kind of makes sense because this is the number of nodes we allow the retriever to fetch. And the one below is the precision, which also makes sense because the more nodes we retrieve, the less precise our solution or retriever is. The interesting thing is you can see that it plateaus relatively fast at around 5 or something, or even earlier. And it's interesting because this allows you to optimize your retriever for your metric. I did not show it here, but as you might guess, the more nodes you retrieve, the more tokens you will send to the LLM, which means this increases both the cost in terms of like money if you use OpenAI, and also the latency and so on. So for instance, having access to those metrics can help you optimize the retriever to your needs. Maybe, on your specific use cases, the retriever is performing very well, and therefore you can afford to reduce the number of retrieved documents. On the contrary, maybe for some reasons, the retriever needs to fetch a lot of nodes for the LLM to perform well, and therefore it might make sense to increase that to make sure that your agent does the right thing. We have another metric. We can actually use the same metric for the LLM. And the idea is that we want to measure the ability of the LLM to identify the right XPath and generate the code that interacts with those elements. So it's pretty simple. We just feed the retrieved HTML to the LLM and we ask it to generate the code to do the action. And then because we have identified the element, we can extract the outer HTML and therefore the backend node IDs. of the identified element of the AI. And then we can also compute the recall and the precision. Little mistake here. And plot those things. So interesting examples, performance that we've observed is that we've evaluated open source and closed source LLMs in the ability to generate the right action. You can see here, for instance, on the x-axis, we plotted the size of those models. Unfortunately, for the proprietary ones, we don't know how many parameters they have. But for instance, you can see that there's a kind of axis, like we could plot a curve or straight line that goes through llama-3 8 billion, llama-3 70 billion, and the other ones, even though like we don't know their model size. And we see that CodeStral for Mistral is actually much better than the others because you want to be on the top left corner, which means the most accurate models with the smallest amount of parameters. And you can see that CodeStral is on, in its own weight division because it's outperforming llama-3 70 billion, but it's like 3 times smaller. And actually it's as good as Gemini Flash. So, it's a very interesting thing, I think. Also, we can do other fun experiments. I know that some of you are interested by using, local models that you can run on a laptop. And I guess most of you can run only llama-3 8 billion. But the interesting thing is, if you do retries of your LLM, you can actually improve the performance. Because as you know, those models are non-deterministic, and the first few tokens might impact a lot the end performance. And therefore, if you start with the wrong first tokens, you might end up with the wrong answer. So that's why, for instance, doing retries can be a good way to increase the likelihood of finding the right solution. If you want, I have a small interesting paper that from DeepMind on this topic that explains it very well. So the idea is the top one solution, the top one token might lead you on the wrong path. And sometimes the right path can be with another token. And if you start on the wrong path, you might not find the right solution. But just with some randomness, you might start to go another path that for some reason, the autoregressive model is able to use to find the right solution. And so doing retries is a good way to increase the likelihood to find the right path. You can see here that those are, by the way, those are independent retries. We do not ask the LLM to reflect. This is something we think of. But interesting thing you can see is that like increasing retries greatly helps with llama-3 8 billion performance, which means that as long as you're okay to do retries, you could almost get the same performance as a llama-3 70 billion just by doing retries on an 8 billion model, which means you could potentially run it on your machine. We do plateau slightly lower than llama-3 70 billion, but as I said, we didn't fully leverage that. But this is a very interesting phenomenon. It means that those the smaller models might have the capabilities, but it might be simply harder for people to get them to use that. But if you prompt it long enough, you might be able to trigger those. So that's an interesting result that you can get with those metrics. So I'm going to stop here and soon, and I just wanted to share with you again the vision of a project. As you might know or not, our goal is to build the open source standard for the community to the AI agents and be a little bit like the Apache server was to the web. As you might have seen recently, there is more and more concentration For instance, it's always the same people like Apple, Microsoft, and so on that go together. And for instance, I don't know if you noticed, but in the Apple conference, it is quite one-sided what Apple provides to developers, in the sense that developers provide tools to Siri, but you cannot use your own AI model to pilot other apps, which means that developers are only providing tools. It's a one-way street. And I think it's not the most ideal solution, because specializing agents can provide much better solutions. And second, it's also good to have a little bit of competition. So that's why we're trying to democratize, an open stack for others to, create their own agents and not be reliant on only Apple and OpenAI. And so I will leave things here. As you know, we have a GitHub where you can come. We have a Discord. Laura is putting plenty of issues that people can fetch. We have a lot of R&D projects if you want, and we'll be very happy to discuss those. So now I think we can answer the questions. So yeah, I guess we might do like a few written ones and then do a few live ones and maybe a little bit of back and forth.
Yeah, we don't have as many written questions as last time. So if anyone has any questions, go for it in the chat, or you can like raise your hand or whatever.
Okay. So other question. Okay. I'm looking at the questions. Have you considered using the Gaia benchmark? I don't know what the Gaia benchmark is, unfortunately. So I don't know who said that, but we'll be happy to have a look. Nathan has curated a few different data sets that we're standardizing to test our model. For instance, there is what we call the wave that comes from our data, but we also clean the two other data sets, which are called web links and man2web. I think we haven't had time to fully uniformize them. So if someone is actually, people are not seeing my screen. Yeah, sorry. As I showed, we have like our data from the telemetry, web links, man2web. They are slightly different, so we are trying to uniformize them. But yeah, the more the better, because we really want to have a data set that is as representative as possible of what agents should do on the internet. So I don't know what Gaia is, but if it's one of those, we're very happy to do it, or maybe have someone else in the community, uniformize those and add them. Okay. I'm looking at others. What if the XPath is variable in track for element we don't intend to? Yeah. So it can happen that there is ambiguity. Like there can be two very similar elements that are not in the same, place in the page. But so usually when there's ambiguity, it means that it's the same thing. For instance, like click on enterprise on top or click on enterprise at the bottom. So if those are actually doing the same thing, I guess it's okay. In some instances, they might be very semantically similar, but have different purposes, and you might end up in the wrong place. Yeah, here, I think it's non-trivial, even for human, I would guess, because if those things are very semantically similar, it will be complicated. So yeah, that's a tough one. I think, Nate, I don't know if it arises a lot on the data sets we tried, but it's a good question on how to handle those. Yeah, that's a good one. What is your feedback, Nathan, on? Because I think you have tested those a lot.
I think when there is a semantic ambiguities between two elements, there is only the LLM that can try to find the correct one, and if he don't find the correct one, maybe with the retrieval approaches, there is a chance that he will try the other one, but the retriever in itself can't discriminate the correct one because he has not the information to fulfill the task. He has no clue about what the true goal of the action is.
I guess something we could do at some point in the future is to try to have some kind of backtracking. Like, for instance, maybe we click on the wrong button, but the word model on top would say, hey, I'm on the wrong page, so I should go back in time. And then maybe have something where we have the most likely element, and then it tries the other one, something like that. Yeah, it's a non-trivial one, but I don't know how often it arises in practice. Maybe I can take an oral one before I go back to the written ones. Okay, I guess I'll go back to the written ones. Maybe it's for you, Nathan. So how are the HTML dictionary entries formed?
They are formed corresponding to the different HTML classes, and it's quite complicated because we are selecting, there is a parameter that is re-rank fields, and we are selecting some potential fields that are in the HTML element. We select them and we only use them, but you can override this parameter to modify the fields you want to have in your dictionary in order to retrieve on those different fields. And we add one field that is the XPath field, that is used to match the dictionary with the nodes from Llama index in order to find the correct one. And for us, it's the simplest way to do so. But they are created by parsing the HTML and selecting each element in the HTML code and creating one dictionary.
Okay. Why don't you use the accessibility tree? That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. I think we looked at it some time ago, and I think we should use it. Also, it's not always available from my understanding, but yeah, yeah, I guess we should have a look at using that. Yeah, I saw some other use it, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I guess we made our lives more complicated, so yeah, I guess we should use it indeed. So assuming the action is successful, does not have the desired result. What will happen? Someone gets a screenshot of every step. That's a very long answer. Okay. Huh. At every step before.
That one's not a question.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Can you share the presentation I just did? Yes. Yeah, that retries improves the quality. This is, yeah. As I mentioned, do you see benefits especially in abstraction?
We will look more into the retry approaches because I think we can improve the performances, especially for local model that are weaker when you only try one, but maybe with a feedback of the error of the first try, you can improve even more the performances. So we'll look into it.
Do you see benefits in specifying an abstract action space like click there? I mean, So do you mean like okay, at the end of the day, you still need to execute the code. So today with Selenium, but there's one subtlety is today we're not. So we're doing a small change where today we generate and execute arbitrary code, which is mostly Selenium, but it's not great. We're going to pivot towards having a set of operators like, I don't know, click, scroll, type, and so on, and have the LLM not generate arbitrary code, but the arguments to call those specific controls. And therefore, it's first, it's easier to abstract things different between different solutions, like a Chrome drive, a Chrome extension, Selenium, and so on. And also, it's much safer. So it's something we will do quite soon. So I don't know if it answers the question, but that's something we're going to do.
Basically, that was the question, is to know whether you put a kind of abstraction like scroll, click, and then you ask maybe the LLM to rephrase it into the language you like.
The thing that is interesting though is the ability to generate arbitrary code can be quite an issue, but also it means that, for instance, on some examples that we have, for instance, in the we now have examples where we do web QA. For instance, we have like I guess you can see that you can also do assert and so on. That's the point I wanted to make. You can do complex things like if, else, and so on. And so like for instance, we have an example where we take like a feature file for QA, Lavag executes the flow, and then you can export the Selenium code and in the PyTest, and therefore make your testing life much easier. And here it's good because it's able to do the asserts because it is arbitrary code. So I guess it depends on use case. I think most people will be more interested in having a safer approach, but in some use cases it's so strength to be able to generate arbitrary code. So it really depends. But yeah, that's a good point you made. So yeah, our prompt is, it's a bit big. And yeah, I guess it depends on what, like, how performant you want to be, because we can reduce it and, for instance, just use the dictionaries that we showed. But as we said, we also noticed that it could fail with not enough context around the XPath you want to target. So far we have optimized for generalizability, in the sense we don't want the agent to fail. But as we mentioned, you can also optimize, for instance, reduce the number of retrieve documents, not use the context, the chunks, or have smaller chunks and so on. So I think there is not a one size fits all solution. And that's why we provide a framework and tooling so that people can optimize the performance of their agents based on their criteria. So
Daniel, are you answering my question related to the number of tokens that are getting processed? Yeah, so I was like asking about the prompt, because the Selenium prompt you see in the package, that's very long. So currently I'm not asking about the chunks that we are sending. Only the prompts I think are too long. So every time you are like going through a step, so I think the prompts are being sent to the LLM. So if there are 4 steps, then I think close to 20,000 tokens are getting exhausted there. So I think there is a provision to optimize these prompts also, so we can reduce the cost.
Yeah. So it's a good question of what is optimal strategy. Like we didn't show it here, but we also had graphs where we reduced the number. I mean, what is driving the size of the prompt are the examples inside. It's not so much the instructions, it's examples. But if you don't put enough examples, you might not trigger the ability to generate the right code. So as always, it's a trade-off. We are going to release an option where we can use by default local models. But then, as we showed, it might not be performant. I mean, as performant as GPT-4.
Yeah. That I get. And also one more point, like I want to discuss like my previous question, which was related to if the XPath, what if the XPath is wrong? So if we take the screenshot, what we do that we highlight the element that we want to interact. So when it is highlighted, at that time, if we take the screenshot and then check if the element that we want our model to interact with, whether it's the right screenshot or not, by using the screenshot of the highlighted element. If it's correct, then we can proceed or we can go through some other XPath that we can also try. Just an discussion I want to make on this stuff.
So I'm just, I don't, is there a question or is it just like,
Yeah. So you are taking screenshots, but you, when the process starts, you also highlight the element at some point. So when we highlight the element, if we take the screenshot at that point, then
No,
and send
it
it.
usually takes I mean, the screenshot that is used by the word model is the one before elements are highlighted, because by definition it's highlighted because we have identified the elements. So we don't use the highlighting. The highlighting is more like an UI thing. I mean, actually, it's not. If you're still on the same page, and maybe it's something we should deactivate, which is we should deactivate the highlighting, because I mean it can be useful. And you could say, if you want to retry, you could say, oh, by the way, the highlighted part is something I tried and didn't work. So that's a good question. Should we keep the highlighting or not to use it as a cue for the LLM, the one model?
Yeah, I was saying that the screenshot with the highlighted element, if we also send it to the world model, then whether it will be able to recognize that the right element has been captured.
Yeah, it's possible. We did some try where I showed the page before interaction, I show the highlighted element, and then I show after what happens, and it can infer if the right action has been taken. I haven't done a proper benchmark of how accurate it is, but you can use that information to understand whether you did the right step or not. You can even, if it's not going right, it's not doing well, you can label it yourself or semi-automatic label it and train your model to understand what is the right semantic step. It's not something we have yet.
Yeah. I am also doing some research on your package, so I will let you know in the next webinar what are my insights.
Great. No, it's really cool. Yeah, and don't hesitate to interact on the Discord if you have issues.
Yeah,
We're very
definitely.
happy
Yeah.
So, Miltul asked what's a good place to contribute to the project. Maybe Laura, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so we're always putting like issues up on our GitHub, so you can have a look. We try and tag them as help wanted if they're particularly things we're looking for help on. Also, if you have any ideas, you're welcome to open an issue, and we'll get back to you. And then the other thing is we're pretty active on Discord, so we've kind of got subsections of areas you could contribute on, and so you can just ping us on Discord, but we're pretty available as well. If you ping us on Discord, we're gonna reply, and we'll find something that is gonna fit your skill set.
Yeah. Is there a possibility to add guardrails? There will be once if we stop doing the bad thing, which is arbitrary code execution, and instead have a graph of execution, then we can put constraints on what is acceptable to execute on that graph. There are actually very interesting papers that I can show you that I would like to implement one day, but it takes some time. Where is it? Sorry, just looking at oh yes, it's this one. Okay, let me show you. So I mean, if someone is really interested to, if you want to implement papers, which we will do more in the future, feel free to reach out, because we have a list of very cool papers we want to implement. And we also have the dataset, as we showed, the tooling for you to evaluate the impact of implementing those papers. So yeah, that's another contribution that we're going to launch. But yeah, so in this paper, they look at the output, the plan that the LLM is coming up with, and they define a domain-specific language for this kind of plan, and then they can verify that the LLM respects the constraints that users provide. Yeah. So basically, yeah, there are ways to kind of, limit what it can do. So that would be pretty cool. Today, it's very limited. But yeah, I think that would be very cool if you could say, for instance, yeah, there are simple ones you can say, for instance, don't go beyond, I don't know, let's say Amazon or whatever, or don't do that. But sometimes you need semantic constraints on what it can do. And that's one way to do that. So yeah, I guess at some point we'll do like formal proof of whatever it wants to do and so on. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting field. We are just at the beginning.
Daniel, sorry to interrupt you. Could I have a link to that paper? I'd like to read it. Just
sure. Yeah. Also regarding if you are like a big geek of papers, like we launch actually today, like channels for papers. I have a small Google Doc where you can drop suggestions. And while we are at it, there's a pretty cool one that we actually that I really want to implement, which is about looking at how LLMs can solve Olympiad programming, which is pretty tough programming challenges. And they find that, okay, out of the box, it really sucks, like 8.7%. Then when you do chain of thought, retrieval, and so on, it gets 20%. And the very funny part is, if you put a human in the loop, then it's pretty fucking good, like 13 out of 15 problems solved.
Yeah.
So that's something I really want to do, is provide an option for a human to step in and provide feedback for the LLM.
Yep.
And that's exactly what I did here. With a human in the loop, you can get GPT-4 to solve Olympiad level of programs. So yeah, that's just a small digression, but yeah, that's kind of stuff. So yeah, we have a channel papers if you want.
Yep. Thanks for sharing.
Other questions? Is the one more sensitive to the resolution of the screenshots? I am not an expert yet on the limitations of multimodal with vision, but resolution does matter. So I think, yeah, it's something we can play with. So something I did not mention is once we know that, for instance, a specific configuration of the action engine has 100% accuracy on, let's say, 200 data points, we can freeze it and then evaluate the one model to see how good it is to generate the instruction for the action engine to be right. But that means that then we can evaluate world models. And that means, for instance, we can evaluate, for instance, the open source world models. How good is my multimodal model in providing the right instruction to a specific action model we know is able to solve it? And that would be really cool, because then we can also play with parameters, hyperparameters, like, okay, did the resolution make my model dumber or not? So that's something really cool that we're going to release soon. I think, Masoud, you have your hand raised. So for once, someone is wanting to talk. So yeah, you can go.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you very much for very, very interesting presentation. Couple of things. one would be, I think I'm very, very interested to see if you can kind of demo to come up with like a real life business case scenario, and then just give a demo of how it actually can function in terms of, dealing with a kind of a business case. I've been thinking about this to see to come up with some sort of suggestions, because I think that will I see tons of potentials. I'm just trying to kind of navigate it towards the business use cases. That's one thing. The second thing would be, if I recall correctly, last time you said you addressed it, that how it deals in terms of when it comes to the paywalls, or if it's like I don't know, like to on web access, but if it's subject to authentication and logging, how does it deal with that? And then what I'm trying to understand is whether you can actually create instructions to, like, I don't know, for instance, to log into your cloud account and do this and this and that, those kind of things, for automations.
So regarding the second question, Laura did some work on the documentation where we explained how you can plug into an existing browser session, so that this way it solves the issue of getting logged in. Because if you're already logged into this session, you can just connect Lavag and it will pilot it and be logged. So it solves this. And Laura is also working on some effort to, for instance, just click on whatever, accept cookies and so on. So we have examples
Yeah,
in the docs.
Yeah, because this was like a problem for us. It has been something where Lavag can struggle sometimes. So that's why we were looking at what to recommend to help people get around issues like that. So we found that, like, yeah, plugging in an existing browser session is a pretty good way of not having to deal with so many pop-ups to like accept, reject cookies and log in. Sometimes it will work with like logins, but it depends a little bit on how the website's designed. And the other way to do it is you could put in like a manual pause where you can actually manually like log in if you need to. So that's possible as well.
I mean, you don't have to do it all the time, because if you are if you record, if you cache this information, the cookies and so on, then you don't need to log again. So you might have to do it once, and then it's okay.
Okay, and does it also work in the same manner for like instead of the session, it would be like token based, I don't know, like API keys, etc.
Yeah. So we also provide the ability to provide user data. I mean, I guess it depends. The question is not API tokens, because we work on a browser. So the question is, do you want to use a tool, or do you want
not API, like a SSH kind of thing. So you're accessing through a browser, but you need like some sort of a key in order to be accessing the link.
I don't understand. I mean, what scenario is that?
Say for instance, you need to access like a static IP address, but you need a key in order to actually be able to get into behind the what's on the static IP address.
On the browser?
Yeah, because you would access it via browser, yes.
Well, I guess the question is just how. I didn't know that you could do SSH with a browser, but I guess whatever you currently do, we can reproduce it technically either through. I mean, if it's really inside a browser, I guess you can most likely Selenium or so on has the ability to do that. And if it's out of the browser, we can just provide a tool that does it for you. So I think whatever the case is, there is a way to do it automatically. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be good if you could, if like you ping us with a specific, like specifically what you want to do, and we could try it out together. If you want to like ping us on Discord, we could have a look at it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that. I think because one of the things that I'm thinking about is that if it's a browser-based action kind of thing, there's a lot of network and DevOps things taking place, but they need to ping it. They need to pin it into like a static IP address in order for other people to be able to access it via web browser, as opposed to logging into the virtual machine from so many different layers of firewall, etc.
That's a very good one.
That's a huge one, and I haven't been quite sure whether that actually, because it's browser based, but I just didn't quite get my head around how it gets through the token, the key that the security key that needs to pass through.
I guess, as we said, you can, if you're able to do it today, just do it manually, and then just plug. I don't know if you know about that, but Selenium can plug onto an existing browser. So that means that you just do the regular authentication, and then once you're done, you plug it, and then you let it do, its thing. So that's for sure. That works 100%. I mean,
so you need like to have a plugin installed on the virtual machine itself.
Not
like
necessarily. The plugin, you need the plugin. I mean, you can just have Selenium. Okay, so basically you just need to run your browser in developer mode with, there's like a developer port you can open, and then your Selenium plugs through that access. So I don't know if you see what I mean.
Yeah, it's like a workaround.
Yes, you can. You can call it that, but let me show you quickly.
Sure.
So I guess we should add that in the
Daniel, I can speak. Maybe I can
sure.
answer, because Daniel tried to explain. You can do manually some operation in your browser, and after you can take the control with Selenium.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's very easy. You just need to have a link.
Yeah. So for instance, you can run like your Chrome with a remote debugging port. And then I don't remember the flag you provide to your Selenium, but then you say, okay, remote debugging port, whatever. And then, it will pilot it. But this session I just launched, I can be logged in and so on. I can do whatever I want. But now I can plug into this, I can go to my OpenAI account and so on. And this, okay, here I'm logged out because I got logged out of it, but it's persistent. I could, close it, come back, and I will still be logged in. And as long as I run it with this debugging port, there is no issue.
And it wouldn't matter whether it's HTTP or HTTPS.
I don't think it matters.
Okay.
No, one thing it just matter, Daniel, in your screen, it was you have a line WS dot something, and you just give that to Selenium, and after Selenium takes the control.
Yeah. So here it was like so remote debugging port that I think I need to give to Selenium. Yeah.
You have it on your screen. He explained in the verbose module.
If that secured access could be dealt with, and then action can take place within the secured environment, then you can combine that with I don't know, like a chatbot to receive instructions as to, okay, what happened in terms of when the agent gets behind the secured environment and what needs to be done, like a remote deployment or something.
Yeah, I do guess
Does it make
that in
sense?
that case, yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's definitely an interesting use case we have to explore.
I mean, count me in, because I've got
I think I pinged you, by the way. You haven't answered.
Oh, I haven't received.
Yeah, no, it's okay. But yeah, maybe let's continue this conversation, on the Discord.
Sure. Absolutely.
But yeah, let me just also ask questions. Laura, I think you asked, yeah, is the Llama 70B retry consistent across LLMs? I mean, the issue is that we are saturating in terms of performance in the benchmark. So I am not sure like you would get the same jump, because like GPT-4 is already at maximal performance. So but it's a good question. Do you still get a little spike with others? We haven't tried that with like the other LLMs like Llama 70B. I mean, Codestral is already almost at the level of Gemini. So I'm like, yeah, I guess you will only see the marginal gain because it's already good.
Yeah,
but it's a good
my
question.
thinking is, I'm like, we have by default, I think like 4 retries. So if we provide like the data, the like retry data for each LLM, then like people can decide how many retries they want to give for the LLM they're using. Like maybe they want to adjust it.
Yes. Martin asks, okay, what are the tips for robustly generating the navigation prompts with an LLM? So wait, so navigation prompts, do you mean like, so what are the tips to provide the right instructions for the LLM to do the good code generation? I don't know if Martin is still here.
Yes, sorry. My question was, since you're giving prompts to the navigation engine, like enter the search or click this button, when implementing workflows like one level up, how are you generating those prompts?
Oh, you mean the instructions, like click on whatever?
Yeah, exactly. The instructions that you send into the
So as we showed, it's what we call the world model. So it's a multimodal model on top of it. So let me get it for you. So yeah, it's this one. So we have another model that generates the instructions to the action engine / navigation engine. So that's how it's generated.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Let me get another one, and then Masuda, I give it back to you. Okay, wait. So you need a prompt for each. I think Gaetan, you ask you need a prompt for each action. I don't know what you mean by that.
No, but I think you just answer about that. It's
okay.
Yes, because I saw a technology, or there is a web browser. Some people say click on something, and after the browser do something, on the retry, it's just an assistant, No, it's autonomous, if I understand properly.
And yeah, okay. Masood, yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question. Would it also be able to trigger other things within the like secured environment?
Yeah, I mean, as we mentioned, you can plug tools. It can invoke tools. I mean, today we have one. but it's not that exhaustive. But yeah, you can do arbitrary things, I guess. But as someone mentioned also, there might be security issues, so you might want to make sure that a human in the loop, or that you have specific policies that are always enforced. But yeah, you can technically do arbitrary things.
Okay, that's huge. I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
we
something I have in mind
definitely.
is like an agent where it starts to do like safe instructions, and when it starts to be risky, it sends a notification on your phone, like a WhatsApp, where it shows, oh yeah, I'm about to do that. Are you okay? And you say yes, and then it finishes the stuff.
Yeah, and also you can the other thing you can do is like for those kind of things you can like, I don't know, like for instance you can create like a action inside, like, I don't know, on your cloud, that it just communicates with that action, and then if it's authenticated or authorized, then it will kick in and do whatever it needs to do. I think it could literally change the whole server side, the backend, the cloud, everything to do with the networking and operations and maintenance and those kind of things. That is a huge game changer, because if you could literally instruct it to go and do things, as opposed to just having people to constantly follow the instructions and come up with errors and everything, that will reduce a lot of troubleshooting time, as well as the whole like migrations, for instance. That's a huge thing.
Yeah, definitely we need to talk.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think I just pinned you on the Discord if you saw. Okay, I think Raul asked, can we have an approach similar to auto merging retrieval instead of a BM sync? I guess so. I don't see why we would not. I don't know what you think, Nathan or Raul, about the topic, but
yeah, I think we need to look into it more closely to know more about it.
Yeah, if you want, you can open an issue and we can have a look, and maybe you can do a small proposition and we'll see how it fits into the pipeline. I mean, definitely, I guess. Overall, our approach is pretty simple. We provide a benchmark, a data set, and if it works, we say, okay, let's merge it. If it's not as good, we say, okay, maybe not. But it's a pretty simple philosophy of, to accept, suggestions and so on.
Yeah, and it is worth pointing out that like we have a default like retriever, but we have like multiple retriever options, and we can always add more options, and then people can select which one they want, right? Like that's kind of the idea of the framework.
Yeah. I think it's a dream that the thing that will be very cool soon in the future is like on the big action page or something like that, we show like a leaderboard of the top retrievers, for instance, in terms of recall and inference time, for instance. And then every week it's like a Kaggle, continual Kaggle where people can provide the optimal configuration. And this way, as a community, we're able to decentralize, let's say, hyperparameter search in some way, so that we're able to find the best solution. I mean, that's something we want to launch soon, but that would be really cool to have this continuous Kaggle. But yeah. Masood, yeah.
No, I think I forgot to lower my hand.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
All right. Anyone else? So yeah, I mean,
I just want to
yeah.
comment on this kind of this Zoom call that you have now, that for me, it gives me a lot of confidence in investing time in the framework, because when you are this reachable, I know that I can solve, I can get problems solved if needed. So it gives me a lot of confidence in working with Laveg.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and the way you also encourage people to jump on Discord or posting issues, it's very, very approachable and very open. And so it's a great way to build community and confidence in the roadmap.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It means a lot to us, and yeah, that's why we like, waking up in the morning to do that kind of stuff. And yeah, I really think we can build something cool. So yeah, I mean, that's a part of being open. I think some people forget that open source means being open.
Yes.
And not just a source code that is open.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the spirit.
No, I think that like we spent the last, as humanity, we spent the last 30 years to build a text interface to the web. And then we invented a text-based AI model. So it's very natural to combine the two into, I think that's the most powerful step we can do now.
Yeah, I agree. That's our shared vision. Someone asked, could it record changes in HTML as another exception? So I don't know if we look at the delta yet. It says that I don't know if we look at the change in HTML through interaction with the same page. And then it says use the recording to omit under exceptions. So I mean, if the one model takes a new screenshot and it sees something is wrong, it will try another approach to try to fix it. So we don't look at the delta in the HTML. We usually look at the delta in the pixels, which kind of works. I think the visual information is more rich to figure out alternative approaches, unless it is an issue of the action engine. Because if the action engine could not find the right element, it will not do anything. So I guess it depends. If the issue is the one model did not do the right semantic action, it will automatically know that, because it will see that the screen hasn't updated in the way that makes sense. However, if the issue is in the lower part that was not able to generate the code that is the right one, or it failed or somehow, something like that, then I guess in that case you need to debug and try to understand why was no element found. So I don't know if it answers your question, but I guess, yeah. Yeah. I don't know if the HTML delta is the most relevant source of information to self-reflect. I guess we're going to close it soon. I don't know if someone has a final point to make, a question or something, or an ask.
I would just say, if any of you do want to contribute, like, just get in touch with us, because we're always looking for people to work with us.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, thanks a lot, everyone, for coming. I really appreciate the time and the feedback. It's really cool. And yeah, let's keep in touch on Discord. And yeah, Masoud, do answer. But yeah, pretty cool for everyone to come. And yeah, I think the next one will be more on like higher level agent specialization. For instance, how can we have more complex agents, tooling, and so on. So I guess it's really, really fun. So yeah, stay stay on the lookout. Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
See you.
See you.
Thanks.